Hello everybody. I'm Socioeconomic from the University of Waterloo, and it is my pleasure to start us all off with the fourth and final of 4 sessions of the CEWIL Canada Research Series. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land in which I'm meeting with you today is the traditional territory of the Atawadaran, which is the neutral, the Anishinaabeg, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. I also acknowledge that as we come together today while staying apart, we may be gathering on other traditional lands from around the world. I acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we all share these lands today. With me today are series co-organizers from CEWIL Canada's Research Committee. We have Dr. Andrea Sator of Simon Fraser University, Sean Elliott of Wilfrid Laurier University, and Rachel Brunn from the University of Calgary. Hi, everyone. And a very warm welcome to all our attendees. As we start our session, I encourage everyone on the call to share their name and institution in the chat. You're also very welcome to include your own land acknowledgement. It would be nice to know which of our colleagues have joined us today. A few notes about the Zoom platform. If you run into tech challenges during the session, your best bet is to leave the call and join again. If the issue persists, please notify us in the chat. We hope to have time for a few brief questions at the end of every presentation. Please use the Q&A feature. It's the black bar at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit your questions. You may address the question to the appropriate person or to the panelists, which is all presenters today, and I will moderate the questions at the end of each presentation. Over the past weeks, the CEWIL Research Series has featured several research papers published in the practice of co-op and work integrated learning in the Canadian context in 2021. The book brings together a collection of research and the practice of cooperative education and work integrated learning in the Canadian context. This book is meant to inspire researchers and practitioners in the field to apply research in their WIL practice, as well as to invite the WIL community at large to ask more questions and further propel WIL research across Canada. It is also available for free download at the CEWIL website. I'll add the link to the chat once the first speaker has started. So let's kick off with a presentation by Roger Strasser from the Northern Ontario School of Medicine. His paper is Immersive Community Engaged Education, More Community Engaged Learning Than Work Integrated Learning. Thank you, Roger. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Shay. I must say this is truly exciting for me to join you and to have the opportunity to share my work from the Northern Ontario School of Medicine as part of this research, CEWIL Research webinar. I'll just start sharing my slides at this point, I think. Rearrange my screen. Here we go. Right-ho. So as you heard, my name is Roger Strasser. My background is as a rural family physician, originally in Australia, where I entered the academic world and was Professor of Rural Health with Monash University between 1992 and 2002. And then in 2002, I moved to Canada and joined others in establishing Northern Ontario School of Medicine. So I was the founding Dean and CEO of the Northern Ontario School of Medicine between 2002 and 2019. And then in 2020, I took up my current position as Professor of Rural Health at the University of Waikato. University of Waikato is on the traditional territory of the Waikato Tainui. And I would like to acknowledge that territory and the elders, the Kaumatua, past, present, and emerging. So as you've heard, the focus of my presentation today is immersive community engaged education. And what I'm going to do is introduce you to medical education and the Northern Ontario School of Medicine, and then share research findings from studies looking at the outcomes and the impact of Northern Ontario School of Medicine, and then explore in more depth community engagement. Slide changing working. Here we go. So you can see that I have no conflicts of interest. So let's talk about medical education in the 20th century. In 1910, Abraham Flexner produced a report which really set the model for what is still considered the conventional model of medical education. So Abraham Flexner's report reviewed medical education in the United States and Canada, and he recommended that in the future, medical education should make the connection between science and medicine, and the first half of the program, the students should be at the university studying the basic sciences explanatory to medicine, and the second half of the education program, the students should be in the teaching hospital where the physicians use the scientific method, both in terms of their clinical care and research. And so that model spread around the world quickly, and as I said, is now still considered the standard model of medical education. And during the 20th century, of course, the teaching hospital grew and developed, became known in Canada as the Academic Health Sciences Centre, and to the point where there's this sort of sense of the Academic Health Science Centre as the hallowed temple through which you must pass to become a physician. Now, in the latter part of the 20th century, concerns grew about the preoccupation with the body machine model and the biomedical disease approach. And so that led to some focus on community and actual placements in the community, which sort of, you know, they were a bit like a school excursion, a fun thing to do, but they didn't really count for anything. And certainly with increasing specialization and subspecialization, there was the sense that the pinnacle of the medical profession is to be a teaching hospital subspecialist. Now, as the 20th century progressed, the range of health professions and the models of healthcare progressed and changed. And in the second half of the 20th century, it became clear that the students only learning their clinical medicine in teaching hospitals had some limitations. And this slide shows research that was originally undertaken, published in 1961 and repeated in 2001. This was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, and it showed that out of a population of 1,000 people, maybe 250 would consult a physician, and less than one would actually make it into an academic medical center. So in this context, the growing focus on community in medical education developed, and in the 1960s and 1970s, there was community-oriented medical education. McMaster University in Canada was a world leader in this approach. Essentially, the students still stayed at the university and in the teaching hospital, but at least they started thinking about and talking and learning about the community context in which much of healthcare actually occurs. Then in the 1980s and 1990s, we moved to community-based medical education, where the students actually went into the community or go into the community, but still the community is kind of a passive recipient. It was a bit like another practical class or a lab. And then starting in the 2000s, community engaged education, where the community is an active participant in the development and the delivery of the education program. So in 2010, 100 years post Flexner, there were a series of reports and recommendations about the future of not just medicine, but health professional education. And this Lancet Global Commission report was one of the most important and influential. And it recommended that the future goal should be to achieve equity in health, and with a series of institutional and instructional reforms and enabling actions. And this recommendation very much consistent with the notion of social accountability. So I've got two definitions on this slide of social accountability. The World Bank one I like because it emphasizes what he calls civic engagement, the active involvement of community and holding service providers and public officials to account. And then the 1995 World Health Organization definition, which focuses on medical schools and academic institutions, and really directs that all of the activities, the education, research, and service activities of the institution is, there's the obligation to direct all of those activities to address the priority health concerns of the population that they have a mandate to serve. Canada, early on, actually in 2001, the Medical Schools of Canada and Health Canada committed to a vision for social accountability in medical schools. Now we're going to move on to Ontario, and this is a map of Ontario, and specifically Northern Ontario. It's actually the population distribution of Ontario, so the black is sparsely populated, and in fact Northern Ontario is huge. It's over 800,000 square kilometres, almost 800,000 people. There are 5 population centres of 50,000 or more, and the rest are small communities, 10,000 or less, spread over a vast area. It's the boom-bust economy of mining, forestry, and tourism, and the health status of the people is generally worse than the general population of Ontario and of Canada. And in this context, in 2000, 2001, people across Northern Ontario said, if we're ever going to have enough doctors and other health professionals, if we're ever going to improve the health of the people of Northern Ontario, we need our own standalone Northern Ontario School of Medicine. And the Ontario government was listening at the time and approved the establishment of the school, which accepted its first students in 2005. The school serves as the Faculty of Medicine of Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Laurentian University in Sudbury, and they're 1,000 kilometres apart. And the school has a social accountability mandate. That is a commitment to improve the health of the people and the communities of Northern Ontario. There's also a commitment to innovation. Distributed community engaged learning is the distinctive model of medical education and health research that we developed in Northern Ontario, guided by social accountability. Distributed means over 90 sites where our students, residents, other learners may undertake part of their clinical learning. And this requires being connected electronically, essentially both to connect in real time and asynchronously. We have an extensive digital library service, which means that if you have the internet, you have access to educational resources and information, pretty much the same as if you're in the big city, like in a teaching hospital. But the centerpiece of distributed community engaged learning is community engagement, interdependent partnerships with the communities, and I'll say a lot more about that as we progress. Immersive community engaged education is really, I guess, the nub of what the secret sauce, shall we say, that has contributed to the success of Northern Ontario School of Medicine, with students living and learning in communities right across Northern Ontario, and very much a sense that the community is actively contributing to the education and training of these future physicians. So this is a research webinar. Let me tell you that I'm about to present findings from research in a whole series of studies under the heading of Tracking and Impact Research for NOSM, Northern Ontario School of Medicine. And this research is undertaken in partnership with the Centre for Rural and Northern Health Research, long-standing research centre at Lakehead University and Laurentian University, and collecting data through surveys every 2 years, structured recorded interviews, and all kinds of administrative data within NOSM, and also the licensing authorities and others, and also some very specific studies about aspects of the NOSM programs. So this, another map of Ontario, and really it shows you visually the 90 plus sites, and also shows you the whole range of different programs. So first, just want to highlight that as well as undergraduate or medical education, or the MD program, NOSM provides residency training in family medicine and 8 other general specialties, and is also involved in producing a whole range of other members of the health workforce, the health team, registered dietitians, physician assistants, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, pharmacists, and others. So I do want to just home in on the immersive aspects of this program. So in first year, just talking about the MD program, in first year, the medical students have 4 weeks living and learning in Indigenous communities. And this includes the remote fly-in, fly-out communities in the far north of Northern Ontario. And these students are living in the community and learning from the community about the history, the tradition, the culture, the social and the health issues. In second year, the students have 2 4-week integrated community experiences in small communities. Here, it is a clinical experience. They're attached to the physicians and the health team in those communities. And then in third year, the students leave Thunder Bay, they leave Sudbury, and they have the whole academic year, 8 months, living and learning in one of 15 communities across Northern Ontario, and they're based in family practice. They see patients, and essentially you can say the curriculum walks through the door. The first patient might be a child, that's pediatrics. The next patient might be pregnant, that's obstetrics. The next patient might have a surgical problem. The learning outcomes for this principal clinical year are just the same as in the other medical schools, but rather than block rotations in internal medicine and then in surgery and pediatrics, the students are learning their core clinical medicine from the community family practice perspective. This is a so-called longitudinal integrated clerkship, and NOSM was the first medical school in the world where all of the students undertake a longitudinal integrated clerkship. Because of the active participation of communities, we call it the comprehensive community clerkship. So let's look at other outcomes from the school. Admissions with the social accountability mandate, we look to reflect the population distribution of Northern Ontario in each class. And you can see that we've been generally quite successful in the sense that in the first 10 years, 92% of the students have come from Northern Ontario, and the other 8% from other parts, remote and rural parts of Canada. If you take out the 5 large population centres, 40% of the population remote and rural in Northern Ontario, so we hit that target. 22% Francophones, a little higher than the demographics in Northern Ontario. 7% was lower than our target of Indigenous, so we tweaked the admissions process, and in recent years, we've been hitting the 12% target of Indigenous students now graduates. And so that's a quick snapshot of the admissions outcomes for NOSM. Now looking at the student experience, you can see the students, they have a sense that they're actually better off. They're learning, they're experiencing generalism in the rural communities, and they're learning in ways that are from their point of view more positive than what they hear from their colleagues in other medical schools. And I would say that this the one that I've highlighted really sums it up. The comment from the student was, "You don't know it until you live it. You don't know it until you live it." Now, what about the career direction of NOSM graduates? The top half of the slide are the MD outcomes from the MD program. 62% family practice, mostly rural. So 62% is almost double the national average for Canada going into family medicine. 33% other general specialties like general internal medicine, general surgery, pediatrics, which leaves 5% in subspecialties like neurology, dermatology, radiation oncology. So those subspecialties are quite important to us for NOSM. First, because we need those subspecialists in Northern Ontario. They do have to go elsewhere for their residency training, but they do come back. And then the second is that it shows that even though we have a very different curriculum model and learning environment in Northern Ontario, our students, our graduates are competitive in matching to residency training, the very competitive residency, subspecialty residency programs. And in fact, most years, all of the NOSM class have been matched in the first round of the national residency match, which just hasn't happened for another medical school in Canada for something over 30 years. The bottom half of this slide just shows the results from the residency training, and you can see that the graduates who did their MD and their residency in Northern Ontario, 94% practicing in Northern Ontario, including in the remote and rural communities. So I want to look now at the socioeconomic impact of the school in Northern Ontario. We've twice looked at the economic impact and shown that for every dollar of taxpayers' money is spent. There's more than $2 of new economic activity that wouldn't be there if you didn't have a medical school. And this this flows through to the small communities, not just Thunder Bay and Sudbury, but all of the communities that are involved with NOSM. And we also looked at the social impact and found that communities felt empowered, really summed up by the phrase, if we can do a successful medical school, we can do anything.
I'm sorry, Roger.
So for Northern Ontario, there are many benefits. Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm wondering if we can wrap this up for the next presentation.
Okay.
Sorry, we're running a little out of time, that's all.
Oh, I thought I had more time. Okay, sure. So this slide just shows the benefits to Northern Ontario of the school. I was going to explore more issues around community engagement and different concepts of community engagement as we have applied it in Northern Ontario, the importance of the faculty members, wherever they are, being fully fledged members of the academic staff, the importance of formal agreements, the really essential for success, and coming back to immersive community engaged education as really being essential to the professional identity formation of the physicians, and then back to the theme of work integrated learning, really showing that the community is not just an employer or a stakeholder, but actually an active participant, and really summed up that immersive community engaged education is summed up by the phrase, it takes a community to train a future physician. And there are a whole series of references that you can follow up, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do apologize having to interrupt, but the floor is open for questions. If anybody has some for Roger, please. And I'm looking at my Q&A. So please use the Q&A option and the black portion, the band on your Zoom interface. And while you do that, Roger, in reading your paper and now listening to you talk, the one thing that keeps coming back to me is what are your thoughts in communities that might have very high healthcare needs, where providers might not have the time, even though they have the intention, to be co-educators of any sort? Is there a way to still have students get that kind of experience, gain those kinds of skills without the physicians being as directly involved?
Yeah, so when we were setting up NOSM, we brought in various physicians, academics from other places who had experience of the model that I've described. And I remember one time one of the physicians in one of the towns said, well, you know, after I've had a student with me, I've taught them everything that I have to teach them, you know, just after a month. And our visitor looked at this physician straight in the eye and said, you know, that the students learn from the patients. And in fact, that's what we found in Northern Ontario, that it's the intense interaction with patients that motivates the students to study hard and to do the best they can for their patients. And so they develop that service orientation, that social accountability mindset. And also because the physicians and the other health professionals that they're working with are generalists, they have generalists as their principal clinical teachers and role models. And so the majority of NOSM graduates have chosen to become rural generalists. So it's about the community, it's about the people, not about the physicians and the wider health team. But I would also say that we developed in Northern Ontario what we call integrated clinical learning. So this is the notion of team teaching and team learning. So rather than one physician or group of physicians being the teachers, it's actually the physicians, the nurses, the pharmacists, the physiotherapists, the whole team are a team of teachers and teaching a team of students, not just one, but a group of medical students at different levels in their education and residents, and and students in other health disciplines like the dietetic interns and the students' future occupational therapists and so on. And what we found is that actually that shares the load. So there isn't this sense of it's an extra burden that the physician or the health professional has to carry, having the students. The students teach each other and they learn from each other, as I say, guided by the patients, and the physicians and the other health professionals, they have their particular time in the day or the week where they're more focused on teaching, but they find the right balance between their role as healthcare providers and their role as teachers.
Thank you, Roger. I know there's a couple more questions that have come up, but we'll come to these once we've gone through the presentations, if we have time at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much once again. Our next presenter is Larissa Horn from the University of Fraser Valley. And Larissa will be talking to us about CITYSTUDIO Abbotsford, a model for innovative work-integrated learning, civic engagement, and professional development. Could I please request the recording to start, after which Larissa is here in person for a live Q&A.
Good afternoon. My name is Larissa Horn. I'm the Experiential Education Coordinator at the University of the Fraser Valley, British Columbia. Today's presentation is about CITYSTUDIO Abbotsford as a model for innovative work-integrated learning, civic engagement, and professional development. The CITYSTUDIO model was first introduced in Vancouver in 2011 as a collaboration between the city and post-secondary institution. The model matches civic challenges with relevant academic courses to impact change. Over time, CITYSTUDIO grew into a global network and became a disruptive community player that designs and delivers educational experiences. The city of Abbotsford, where the main campus of the University of the Fraser Valley is situated, became the 7th municipality globally to launch CITYSTUDIO in 2018. The uniqueness of the model is in the integration of work-integrated learning and experiential learning activities in a single semester-long experience, providing a sustainable challenge to access and non-placement WIL opportunities. It also enables faculty to test their curriculum for relevance and grow a professional network. It delivers a robust and academically rigorous alternative to other forms of WIL that do not alter graduation timeline for students. It provides access for municipalities to innovative ideas generated by the members of the civically engaged future workforce. Several foundational factors contributed to the model's rapid growth. It was pre-existing interinstitutional ties, the Office of Innovation, Strategy and Intergovernmental Relations within the city, whose business improvement team led the way. Marketing was conducted across departments through the lens of organizational improvement and innovation. The model also enjoyed the endorsement by the mayor and council, and it tapped into strategic alignments between the cities and universities' key documents. In the slide, you see the structure of the CITYSTUDIO model and the flow within a single semester. It starts with identifying the challenge, developing the response plan, then initiating semester projects, launching prototypes, and finally showcasing the students' shared work. Theoretically, the CITYSTUDIO curricular programming follows the foundational principles of the WIL matrix as its recently upgraded definition that you have in front of you. Traditionally, the WIL anchored itself in a placement type experiences. The recent scholarship and practice show that a non-placement type WIL extends the traditional conceptual boundaries while delivering the desired learning outcomes. For example, in 2018, the model delivered 11 challenges in 15 main and 3 supplementary research courses involving 238 students, 15 faculty, 11 city primes or experts attached to the projects, and 14 additional city staff. In total, 11 UFV departments from 4 faculties took part in the initiative. The program continued to grow and expand the following year. The qualitative performance indicators include project scope meetings, in-class challenge presentations by city primes, CITYSTUDIO teams attending multiple classes, and listening to students' presentations throughout the semester, as well as the organization of semi-annual Hub-Up showcase events. For instance, in 2018, the spring and fall Hub-Up events attracted 41 faculty, and the total number of visitors averaged 143 attendees. In 2020, CITYSTUDIO converted the in-person Hub-Up, traditionally hosted in the City Hall, to a digital experience. A dedicated website was created by the City of Abbotsford to showcase student success in the spring and fall of 2020, with the number of online visits exceeding 500 viewers per Hub-Up. Within the matrix of WIL, CITYSTUDIO Abbotsford curricular experiences are situated primarily within the service learning and applied research categories. And in-class integration of these pedagogies is scalable and depends on the discipline, project scale, and deliverables. On the slide, you see photographs and posters produced by students who were involved in CITYSTUDIO projects. They're representing various disciplines from visual arts to children, youth, and family care, business, biology, robotics, electronics, welding, and other. One of the flagship courses of the service learning offerings is the Geography and Communications class called Environment, Science, and Communications. The first CITYSTUDIO iteration of the course produced a Littering in the Parks project, and the subsequent iteration of the course addressed the problem of compostable waste collection in multi-family buildings. Both projects received the UFV Community Service Undergraduate Research Excellence Awards for 2018 and 2019. The research-based classes are situated primarily in the areas of urban planning, environment studies, agriculture, public transportation, and public art policies. A poignant example of an applied research project was the Winter 2018 CITYSTUDIO Interdisciplinary Studies course, Public Engagement, Municipal Decision Making. This learning experience provided excellent training grounds for future graduate studies for our students or future municipal government careers. The 2019 iteration of the Local History for the Web class took on a CITYSTUDIO challenge to explore and unveil the composition of forgotten history of original pioneer communities in Abbotsford, colonial settler relations, and the architectural and cultural landmarks currently present. The most recent addition to the growing range of research fields within UFV's CITYSTUDIO framework is the area of equity, diversity, and inclusion, EDI, in urban planning. The three consequent geography courses research the best international practices in public art and community resilience, and designed toolkits to inform future municipal public art policy in Abbotsford. The outcome of this grassroots, students-driven vision is the implementation of a Black Lives Matter social justice art project that represents an example of a collaboration between curricular and non-curricular WIL experiences for UFV students. In addition to service learning and applied research, CITYSTUDIO Abbotsford integrates in its programming the WIL-endorsed curricular experiential learning, such as fieldwork, interactive simulations, teaching labs, and project-based coursework. The CITYSTUDIO model is not based on practicum placements or paid work, and it's not a consultancy. The term work signifies the direct participation in a given civic challenge. Students working closely with and being monitored by a city staff member or a cross-functioning professional team have opportunity to hone their skills, both technical and transferable. Through this exposure, the students experience a working environment with internal and external real pressures in the workplace. The knowledge construction and curriculum design in the CITYSTUDIO model derive from the learner experience itself. The model focuses on experimentation and students' creativity, while at the same time meeting specific course and program outcomes. Through teamwork, the students hone their people management skills, negotiation skills, strengthen emotional intelligence, judgment, and cognitive flexibility, and gain a chance to discuss the ergonomics of the public services sphere. The immersive projects lead to opportunities to enrich their portfolios and fulfill professional competency requirements. Participation in CITYSTUDIO courses also enhances students' resumes and provide competitive advantage for entry-level job applications within the local governments, as well as co-op positions. A number of academic areas have become an integral part of CITYSTUDIO Abbotsford initiative, including geography, biology, business, graphic and digital design, political science, history, sociology, visual arts, robotics and electronics, and others. The participation in the model provides the UFV faculty the opportunities to expand the scope of authentic and relevant experiential learning offerings and move beyond theory into a practical application of concepts. The CITYSTUDIO opens new opportunities for faculty professional development by meeting student expectations in the use of new technologies. The model continually tests the course's content for relevance. It also contributes to the development of the new professional network between Abbotsford civil servants and UFV faculty. Overall, about 25 city staff have been actively engaged in the model, and even a greater number of UFV faculty, staff, and administrators have become invested in CITYSTUDIO development and advancement. Abbotsford's projected population growth to 200,000 people provides a unique platform for CITYSTUDIO students and faculty to make their mark on the future of the city and the local government. The dynamic and iterative nature of the model contributes to the greater openness and flexibility within the internal organizational culture in City Hall. In particular, the CITYSTUDIO model provided an impetus to develop a new program in British Columbia through UFV's continuing education department called Certificate in Civic Governance and Innovation, CGI. In conclusion, the CITYSTUDIO model has established itself globally as an innovative and competitive non-placement will opportunity that is reciprocal, sustainable, and able to bring a culture change. Concluding research in best global practices while working on proposing local solutions gives CITYSTUDIO Abbotsford its unmistaken identity of an innovative multidisciplinary hub and a civic leadership incubator. The longer term goal of CITYSTUDIO service learning courses is to cultivate a civically minded and competent workforce. CITYSTUDIO delivers real-world, course-integrated, as well as non-curricular, non-placement will experiences that provides direct civic engagement and professional development for all stakeholders. Equally importantly, the CITYSTUDIO model contributes to fulfilling the UFV's official mission of engaging learners, transforming lives, and building community. Thank you. And for more information, please contact Experiential Education Coordinator at UFV at larissa.horn, ufv.ca at the Center for Experiential and Career Education.
Thank you very much, Larissa, and I know you're with us as well. That was an excellent presentation. I am keeping an eye on the Q&As coming in. Again, people, it's the little black bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen, probably hiding behind the 3 dots. It says Q&A. In the meantime, Larissa, I thought this was a very exciting project. And the reason it especially resonates with me is the civic engagement piece. I'm wondering if you've seen any intersections of these projects with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, civic engagement, sustainability, the 17 SDGs, and do you have any plan at all of focusing these projects, particularly in that direction?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Shay. And again, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here as part of CEWIL Research Series presentations, as well as the ebook publication. And I would like to also respectfully acknowledge that today I am speaking from the traditional land of the Coquitlam First Nation in Coquitlam, British Columbia, for which I'm very grateful. Thank you for the question about the connection to the UN and sustainability goals. It just so naturally happened that a huge number of our CITYSTUDIO projects are developed and executed in the area of sustainability in the broadest sense. And it's dealing with food security, it's dealing with environmental footprint, it's dealing with youth engagement, and many other areas. And more in CITYSTUDIO model, we see collaboration not strictly between the university and the municipality as it is originally designed, but a third party partnership or a three-way partnership between university, municipality, and other organizations. And among local examples will be Fraser Valley Regional District, which is a sort of bigger administrative structure here. We see Tourism Abbotsford, and we see other organizations such as Archway Community Services that is delivering multiple services to local diverse populations. So that how it applies on the local level, and it often comes to the issue of sustainability. To directly connect to the UN, we haven't explored that avenue yet. I know that several faculty members across our institution have actually worked with the UN prior, and that connection and that line of work is very familiar to our institution. So as far as philosophical underpinnings of our work, we certainly will align our work with major international documents like this and policies. But as far as practical connections, we haven't explored it yet, because the mandate of the CITYSTUDIO is, of course, local. But what we have started doing, especially in our research, we bring best practices in research into our projects. And we actually started with public art and community resilience and EDI principles so far.
Thank you very much, Larissa. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, but seems to be running away faster than I have it budgeted for. I will move on to the next presentation, and if we have time at the end, we'll bring it back to some of the questions that are coming up on the Q&A. Thank you so much once again. Well, we move on to Jadine Preddy from the University of Waterloo. Thank you, Jadine, for joining us and for closing out this CEWIL Research Series with your thoughts in advancing WIL research. Take it away.
Great. Thanks, Shay. It's wonderful to be here today. As Shay said, my name is Jadine Preddy, and my day job is at the University of Waterloo as the Director of Business Services for the Co-op and Experiential Education portfolio. I am presenting to you today from the territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. I have had the pleasure of being involved with CEWIL and WIL research for more than 10 years. And so I can't tell you how heartwarming it is to see the work that's being done, to hear the stories of the programs that were shared with us today, and to see the increasing number of people interested in hearing about the research and becoming involved. So I'm going to take a few minutes to provide some concluding remarks to the 2022 CEWIL Canada Research Seminar Series. A little bit of background, in case you aren't aware, in 2018, at the Montreal conference, the CEWIL Research Committee hosted a research cafe, and it brought together a great group of enthusiastic people. The room was filled, and we were talking about WIL research. We were looking for ideas on ways that CEWIL could foster and grow WIL research in Canada and support a broadening base of WIL researchers. As a result of that session, the research committee planned to offer a first ever research stream of peer-reviewed papers as part of the planned 2020 conference in Newfoundland. That process began, papers were submitted and reviewed, but unfortunately, you know the end of this story. The CEWIL conference in 2020 needed to be canceled. But we didn't want to lose the momentum that seemed to be building in the association, and so we arranged for a research seminar series in the fall of 2020. That was so successful that we decided to put a call out for papers for a Canadian special issue of the International Journal of Work Integrated Learning. And so with that call for proposals, we received so many expressions of interest, it actually ended up leading to 2 separate projects. So the first project, which you may be familiar with, is the first ever Canadian special issue of the International Journal of Work Integrated Learning, co-edited by Ashley Sterling and myself, which was released in September. In September 2021. If you haven't taken a look at it, there are 12 great papers, which we were definitely pushing the limits of issue sizes for the journal. And there are 40 authors who contributed to this work. So congratulations to all of those authors. It's a great statement on a global stage about the role that Canadians are playing in the WIL landscape. The second project that resulted from that call to our membership in late 2020 was CEWIL's first ebook. We released this just before Christmas, and as you know, this has been the basis for the 2022 research seminar series. It's been so personally and professionally rewarding for me to work with Ashley Sterling on these 2 projects, as well as the amazing group of people who have contributed to this very important publication. A thank you to CEWIL for making the funding possible for both of these projects. Editing is expensive, and it helped Ashley and I get this across the finish line that we were able to hire some copy editing help. Another thank you to CEWIL Research Committee for their ongoing vision and support of these projects, as well as those who have been involved in coordinating and organizing the research seminar series. And thank you, of course, to the authors who have shared their work with us today. And in the past 3 sessions, if you weren't able to attend the previous ones, please keep an eye out for the links to the recordings so that you'll be able to catch up on what you've missed. So as we wrap this up, I was asked to share some thoughts on how we can continue to advance WIL research in Canada. And so I have a few thoughts to share. These are some things that I've found useful myself and that others have shared with me. So the first is to attend events like this. There are many opportunities to hear about research that's happening, and that may be this research seminar series, it may be taking a look at the book, it may be attending CEWIL in June, or there's a WACE International Research Symposium at the end of August that's going to be offered both virtually and hopefully also in person. And then hopefully hearing about what's going on is going to spark some curiosity and creativity in you. The one thing that I can say is fairly common across most WIL researchers is that they emphasize the importance of choosing a topic that you really care about. If you're going to invest time and energy into really digging into something, make sure it's something that really matters to you. Once you've identified that, look for what's been done in that area. What have others researched? What have they suggested are areas for future research? Start small and keep a list of possible future projects. That's your best bet at actually getting to the finish line with a project, is keeping an eye on scope. It's very, very easy to get taken off into a variety of directions, especially as you're digging into the literature and you start making connections and thinking about other areas you might be interested in. So my suggestion is start small, but keep a list of things that you may want to go back to for inspiration. Another key component that any editor of a journal is going to be looking for is the application of the research. So when you're selecting the topic and thinking about what the research question is in particular, think about the so what and who cares test. So why is what you're going to be looking at going to matter to the broader community? Why is answering these questions going to help us solve something that the community has been struggling with or wants to continue to improve on? Another thing is to recognize the spectrum of research, everything from evaluating programs all the way through to building collaborations with other institutions, to explore research questions in multiple contexts. All of those things are on the table, and just consider where and how might be the best place to get started. And then last, but certainly not least, the one thing that you can often do to help motivate you and keep you moving along is identifying a mentor or finding a research collaborator. And often that's the momentum you need to get started on something and to keep it moving along, is to find a team of people that you want to work with on investigating your topic. The list of resources could be triple or quadruple this length. I've just picked a few particularly recent ones. So as far as journals, obviously IJWIL is one that I mentioned. The Canadian edition is in the International Journal of Work Integrated Learning. There's lots of good research there from multiple disciplines from different regions of the world. But there's also other higher education journals that publish work integrated learning research, HERDSA, Higher Education Research and Development, Education and Training, Studies in Higher Education. And there's also a CEI Experience magazine, which turns the research and has it sort of a focus on the practitioner component to it. So it's definitely worth checking out as well. There's also workplace learning journals. One of the things that I often do is if I find that there's a particular author that I'm reading their research and really connecting with it, then I'll look to see what other places that they're publishing their research in, and that can help lead me to find relevant places to be looking. Sorry. Advances in research, theory, and practice in work integrated learning, enhancing employability for a sustainable future. This is a publication from largely Australian authors that came out fairly recently that has some really good work in it. There was a book that came out last year, a number of people in the WIL community contributed to, that was published by IGI Global. It's called Applications of Work Integrated Learning Among Gen Z and Gen Y Students. And then a resource that you may not be familiar with is the WIL Research Portal, which can be found at willresearch.uwaterloo.ca. Waterloo hosts this collection of research. It's sort of a friendly way of dipping your toe into the research that is out there. It's sort of a pre-curated list of research that's focused on work integrated learning. Comparable in some ways to what you would find if you went into a library database. It's just that you're going to start with a limited scope. And the other advantage to it is that the original journal for co-op and internships that CEIA used to have, which goes back into the 60s, this portal hosts those articles. So if you're ever reading something and you see a reference to an old article from that co-op and internships journal, you'll be able to find that in the WIL Research Portal. So as I wrap up, I just want to say that the annual CEWIL Research Grant, watch for details coming soon on this. It's a great way to get a portion of research funded. Sometimes that's providing remuneration for your participants, or helping to purchase money to get transcription services or that kind of thing. So take a look at that grant opportunity when it comes out. And so I just want to conclude with an observation that I made when I was attending the first of these sessions in 2022. I had the opportunity to speak at a standing committee for the House of Commons. They were looking into experiential education, and Nora McCrae, Christine Dawson, Ann Fannin, and I were able to speak to them. And it happened in May 2018. And I was there speaking primarily from the perspective of the research side of work integrated learning. And my comments to the committee included the statement, with respect to Canada's potential global leadership in work integrated learning, I see research as a key element. As has been mentioned by my colleagues, there is a great deal that can be learned from Australia, who has mobilized a national strategy around WIL and has a steady stream of research activity taking place. Globally, there is a strong and growing group of researchers in this field, and with support, Canada would be well situated to lead this community. And so as I reflect on having said that, only 4 years ago, I am so proud of the work that's been accomplished through CEWIL, both in the research and practice of work integrated learning in Canada, with help from our government and our governments and the way that this work is being supported. It's been wonderful to showcase the work through this series, and the attendance at these events has certainly provided motivation to keep this work going. So thank you for your interest, and happy Co-op WIL Month. Back to you, Shay.
Thank you very much, Jadine. It's always a pleasure to hear your thoughts on research, and I'm sure people are walking away inspired to at least dip their toes in those waters. Well, to all of us over here, it's almost the hour. Thank you all for joining us on these sessions. I think some of you have been with us along the entire journey. We hope to see you continuing to engage with WIL. Once again, the recordings for all sessions can be found at the link, which has been put into the chat. With that, thank you, everybody. A big thank you to the organizing committee as well. Stay safe, stay well, and have a productive rest of the term. Thank you.